1, 2, 3, taking up space! Woo!
Frankly, Katy Perry should have stayed in space and probably reached her final form as that creature she was in the E.T. video. Because what she achieved through one of the worst billionaires on the planet named Jeff, I can't believe that I'm saying this, is to make me actually hate women. Okay, before I get roped in as a member of the Red Pill Women Hating Club, this is not my intent. As a matter of fact, this is my attempt at diversifying my disdain for the ultra-rich who, trying to be very specific here, make it worse for everybody else. You say, some had been wondering about my general dislike for Elon in recent videos, which I by no means tried to hide. I do not like him, and same goes for my fellow Danes, as exemplified by this sticker on the car of a dude that goes to my local gym. But we focus on me. The recent upload of videos that have been critical of the man have made some wonder if my reaction to his ketamine-infused tantrums wouldn't be symptomatic of me turning into a grifter.
Excuse me, what?
To which I merely said, fair point. So, for the sake of equality, the ladies will be getting some of this verbiage today. So, what happened? The other day saw spaceflight making the news with Blue Origin's latest launch, the Shepard Flight 31, which was supposed to represent quite the monumental achievement. For not only was it going to be the first female crew launch in almost 50 years, it was also going to be quite a big thing to do the names that were associated with it. The likes of singer Katy Perry, alongside Aisha Bowe, an actual aerospace engineer, bioastronautic researcher Amanda Nguyen, there was film producer Carrie Ann Flynn, and Lauren Sanchez, of course, Lex Luthor's girlfriend. And before I forget, there was Gayle King. I didn't want to call her Oprah's friend, but there, I said it. While the rocket itself did not exactly get into orbit, it did pass the Kármán line at 100 kilometers altitude, which does count as making it into space, and is enough of an evidence for any tinfoil conspiracists to acknowledge that the Earth isn't flat. This acknowledgement would have been a nice thing, although a waste of money, very much like this entire endeavor, but a nice thing nonetheless, if it was the actual intent of the mission. But it wasn't. Instead, some of these ladies being on board was less about pushing the boundaries of science or space, but more about pushing a product. Like previous one in its ilk, this was a mission where the payload was 60% ego, 30% branding, and 10% dry shampoo. This whole publicity stunt rubbed me the wrong way, because it was yet another display of rich people being so blind to reality and doing dumb things. One thing, okay, is to send qualified people in space with a purpose. Another is to have failed star Katy Perry spend millions of dollars for a few minutes in low orbit to have her come back down and say stuff like this.
How do you feel? I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you.
What does that even mean? What does that mean, Katy? You do realize that words have meaning, right? Also, billing this as the first all-female flight crew is just a blatant lie. Okay, if one of your parents, likely your dad, was young or a teen around the 1960s, around 69 I would say, nice, they would possess one of these. This is somewhat of a memento. It is actually written in Danish. It stands for Space Conquest, where every coin on this thing represents a memento for what humanity would have considered to be, well, a monumental moment for space exploration. Starting off with the myth of Icarus and Daedalus, going all the way to the Wright brothers, we have something like Louis Blériot, Graf Zeppeli, Auguste Piccard. Oh, Jesus Christ, I've forgotten about this one. The Havilland Comet, Sputnik 1 in 57. We have such things as Gagarin, of course, with Vostok 1. With it ending with Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins in 69 with the Apollo 11 mission. Now, that thing was something that my dad gave me as a kid. as a bit of inspiration. This was one of the factors that played into the fact that I got my bachelor's in astrophysics. A huge inspiration that you will get as a kid if you are into that kind of thing. Now, given that I do not have a son but a daughter, I can still inspire her with some of the things that I do with the male figures that I have on mementos like these. However, I do feel that it would be genuinely nice to be able to provide her with things that are more, well, with people that look like her, inspirations of other women in space. And for such reason, and just my general ignorance about those contributors into space exploration, I would make use of sites such as NASA's to get more information. Now, about a month ago, I was browsing NASA's database so to fact check some of the claims that I had made in a video about NASA's funding, and by default of course the US government's funding to SpaceX and the Commercial Orbital Transportation Service, or COTS. I was genuinely surprised of how accessible a lot of this information was. Now, returning to this site today, I am simply baffled to find out that information about certain people is just not available anymore, because NASA, like a lot of governmental agencies in the United States, are being struck with a barrage of just blatantly idiotic requests, such as being ordered to remove any references of women in leadership from their websites. What? And of course with a particular focus on women of color. We are talking about people who did actual research, actual science, achieved something grand, and any traces of their work are now being erased. Naturally, extra things such as comic books that might inspire a future generation of young women are also being cut off the picture. It is insane. And so meanwhile this is going on, we have some rich women parading and LARPing as astronauts. Like, sorry for going in a bit of a roundabout way so to make a point, but if you want to have an all-female space crew, look nothing further than individuals like Valentina Tereshkova, who flew herself into space and totaled more time in space than the entire NASA Mercury program. She was also the first woman in space, mind you. And of course, there would be some who would be arguing about nomenclature that, oh no, it's actual cosmonaut, so that doesn't count. Yeah, the US did have the actual astronaut, first woman in space, much later, but that was due to the fact that the US had rules such as having to be an actual Air Force pilot before you could even look at a bloody rocket. So individuals such as Sally Ride will arrive much later, and of course there's a point that is to be made about how Valentina got there first because of propaganda points, but nevertheless, the key point here is that she flew herself and the rocket into bloody space. From a young woman just training parachuting to becoming a cosmonaut, she trained for this for years and didn't merely sit in a conference or briefing table eating Haribo gummies and got her qualification like that. It is such an act of faux feminism to name this as an achievement for women in STEM. Not only is this just an exclusive joyride for the ultra-rich who once again get to flaunt their wealth in the faces of people who can literally not afford paying for groceries, and at a time where women especially are facing a lot of difficulties. Some of them are going to justify going out there to save Mother Earth while putting a hole in the ozone layer. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And to the other actually qualified ladies who would be justified to be out there, they would have to justify spending 100k plus money for a deposit for these tickets, and of course having to pay extra for the full ride, of course. To me the thing is this, okay? I'm not a woman. Duh. And while I might have a partner that is really open about a lot of things that goes on in her mind, there will just forever be things that I will never be able to relate to. Nor to my female friends who I know have been heartstrong in their academic ways. But one thing that I can't help but feel is that this entire thing was like a full-blown mockery for every woman who've ever trained to go to space. Like, I've watched I've attempted to watch through the whole thing so to find clips for this video, and I don't ever think that I stumbled on the point where they acknowledge any of the people who came before them, who actually made a moment like this possible? Instead, I could read the pre-launch interviews of the likes of Katy Perry, who hoped that the trip would inspire a whole new generation to make space and science glam. Where do I even start with this? What the hell do you mean glam? The crazy thing is that it goes further, as she is quoted to say that I am motivated more than ever to be an example for my daughter, that women should take up space, pun intended. That is why this opportunity is so incredible, so that I can show all of the youngest and most vulnerable among us to reach for the stars, literally and figuratively. I am honored to be amongst this diverse group of celestial sisters. For which, no fault to the first point, I do believe that most parents, if not every, seek to inspire their children. But did you absolutely think that next part through? Did you have to say celestial sisters? Really? This is why people hate celebrities. Like, how come you be so out of touch? This has nothing to do with women in STEM. Like, I could go to Silicon Valley right now, spend some time with friends, eating croissants, bakeries and drinking coffee. Would that make us men in informatics? Like, it is freaking weird. And speaking of weird, I know that this is a little bit antiquated and quite an old and perhaps a bit crass jokes, but having an all-female crew strapped into what I can only describe as a giant metal dick shot up to fuck the skies, it's very phallic. Like, everything about this thing was just wrong. From the crew members to Jeffrey trying to pretend as if the hatch could not be opened from the inside. Yeah, they actually were trying to urge them not to open the door before they can fake up a celebration and have the boss do the opening. They even had the audacity to try to remove that from the main upload. Wild thing. Even to the interviewer, that absolutely sucked.
It's incredible. It takes your breath away. And I feel like I have all this adrenaline and I'm just standing here.
Right? It's very true.
Tabitha, I love you putting them on the spot there. Chloe and Chris, are you guys going up?
Keeping up with the Kardashians
In space.
We're waiting for it. That's the next all lady launch.
We are so cooked, okay? We are so cooked. Even the costumes sucked. And mind you, I've had my criticism towards what SpaceX proposed there, and those are suits that I had to warm up to because I needed to learn about the specs that they were made out of, and they're genuinely good things. See, I can give Elon's products some credit when they are actually good, but these are nothing but what they look like. Costumes. I could put on a head right now. This does not make me come from the south or be a cowboy. I would also need a horse. The days that followed this lady's landfall was even wilder because Dan started facing a lot of criticism for what had transpired, and the interviews that he participated in did not make it much better, beside of course the whole jargon that Katy Perry will be spewing out.
I hope they can see the unity that we modeled and replicate that and understand that we weren't just taking up space, we were making space for the future. And for me, like Gail said, this wasn't a ride, wasn't a destination, it was a journey, and it was a supernatural one.
She just needs to stop talking. A lot of people took onto social media, especially TikTok, to mock them as much as they could, and a lot of allegations started coming about this, some that were justified and some that were not so much, as some stated that the whole thing was being faked, beyond just the thing with the hashed door that Jeffrey was trying to lie about. But there was like propositions that the whole thing was being faked because of the rough landing that they had. But I will state this, okay? The wailing and moaning that you could hear from them coming down, you can't fake that stuff, okay? What is wild to me was the attempted curation of the whole event that was happening after this, right? From Bezos taking like a full page in the news that he owns to try to talk about the suits that they were wearing, by citing stuff like, usually, you know, these suits are made for men, Miss Sanchez said recently on a video call from the West Coast. Then they get tailored to fit women. or not tailored. An all-female spacewalk planned in 2019 had to be cancelled because NASA did not have 2 spacesuits to fit 2 women. How in the fuck is this real news? This is outright media manipulation. The spacewalk did happen, granted months later after even politicians such as Hillary Clinton called for extra suits to be made, but it did in fact happen. To the interview that was conducted by one specific individual. Like I said, the interviewer for Flight 31 absolutely sucked, and that's because they are paid by Bezos. But when the real news had to interact with a person who worked on the news, Gayle King, this was her response to the criticism.
I don't like that people are calling it a ride. A ride, you know, you never see a male astronaut who's going up in space and then you say, oh, we took a ride. We actually duplicated the route that Alan Shepard did. That's why it's called, this particular capsule is called the New Shepard. My question is, have y'all been to space? Have you been to space?
No, motherfucker, we got bills and shit.
Naturally, she went with all of the great things that were going on there and did not acknowledge any of the bizarre shit that this company has been trying to do. And beside that, lady, excuse me, is the fact that you did this whole thing as a stunt to spend 11 minutes in space for absolutely no reason. It's the same thing like justifying to send freaking flat earthers in the South Pole to have to tell them that the Earth is not flat. Great, you learned something. You've seen what space looks like, which you could have seen from the photos taken by a telescope or watched videos in real time. But you've wasted general resources for things that could be applied for the very women that you're trying to advocate for. Like, seriously, I feel like historians at some point are going to look at this era and wonder how some of us even made it out alive. Like, I am somewhat elated that for what it's worth, most of the responses that this event got were negative, and despite the fact that the company's owner, a lesser charismatic Mugatu, who owns the news, was trying to curate this whole thing but absolutely failed, that this whole mess is being clowned on by everybody. Almost everybody. And I can't believe that I'm saying this, but even Elon did a better job when it came to aeronautics. Like, he helped bring back the astronaut that was stuck in space recently after bitching and moaning about it for months. And even his satellite service, Starlink, does help some people, probably not Ukraine, but some people do get benefits from that. This whole thing here was just a publicity stunt, sending Billionaire in space to take selfies. Selfies. Like, I have to project myself on a green screen right now in a video game in order to get the experience of being there in outer space, and I'm actually shocked at how good this looks. God damn. Like, I would not at any moment pull out my phone and try taking pictures were I in a situation like that. And by the way, for everybody who might be wondering about this beautiful game is called Deliver Us the Moon. It's like a third to first person platformer that has somewhat of a decent story and some nice speculative science to boot. And there is also Deliver Us Mars, where you can actually drive a rover. It's a pretty nice game, I think. It actually centers around the story of a digital female astronaut whose trials and tribulation absolutely overshadows whatever it is that those girl bosses did out there the other day. So if you want to check it out, please feel free to do so. And this is not a sponsored segment. I just got an excuse to use my green screen, so I grabbed it. Look, I'm not even American, but unlike the statement that a very stable genius said the other day, I think that the empathy we share for the struggles of people, regardless of where they come from, is one of our biggest strengths. So when in a time where women's rights are being taken away, comes girl bosses here celebrating women's wrongs, you have got all the right to be annoyed. So to conclude the aftermath of this, with the above 100 or so female astronauts that you can find if you are looking at a wiki page, the Shepard's payload was added to it. This is evil, okay? Like, this is evil. This is not caring about scientific progress, okay? This is just loving your publicity and it fucking sucks. Quick correction on my part. Luckily, after the massive backlash that this entire thing has received, this has been altered. Now, I know that this will be seen as an atypical grievance for my predominantly male audience, but you know, I can't be talking about stellar phenomena all the time or funny rocks that might hit us. And according to some of you, I can't be talking about the greatest gamer that this world has ever seen either. So the craziness that Jeffrey had been doing as of late and the women that were coupled to it will have to do this time. What I can do though is to remind you of a moment back in 2021 when Bezos actually brought the man into space. And he had the likes of William Shatner along with him. This is the second time this week that I'm talking about William Shatner, isn't it? In that event, after landing, Shatner had let's say, an epiphany, somewhat of a realization of just how weird this entire thing felt like. And he got very frustrated about it and wanted to voice his grievance about it. However, Shatner, who was almost on the verge of tears trying to express himself, was met by this goober who could think about nothing else but spraying champagne on his plastic dolls. These are the people they were dealing with here. The people who are affecting our economy the most, right? Influencing elections and the news. And so when I hear people say such things as eat the rich, you know, I could get behind that. So this was me just, I guess, ranting a little bit about quite the embarrassing moment in science. Just rich people, man, they have way too much money and they don't know what to do about it. It's ridiculous and embarrassing.